Good morning and welcome again to our Sabbath School Lesson Study video. I'm Pastor Isaac. I'm here with Sergio.
Good morning.
And we're glad you're with us. Glad you're choosing to join with us. Now, I know this may not be morning when you're watching this, but a good day to you whenever you choose to watch with us and to study with us. So if you're following along, you know that we're in Lesson 11, and that's going to be the September 4 through September 10 lesson of the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Study. What do we? I'm sorry, I always mess this up. The Quarterly, okay, the Bible Study Quarterly. And we'd like to jump right in, but before we do, Sergio, would you have prayer for us?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
God, we come today to you to ask your presence here with us. You guide us and you show us your word. Please help us to listen and heed all the messages that we'll speak about and acquaint ourselves with tonight or this morning. Please be with us and have your Holy Spirit with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, the title is Longing for More, and it's Rest in Christ. So I found this interesting. I'll start with the memory text, but I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Sergio, I wanted to read that first section because I didn't even know something like this existed. So the memory text is 1 Corinthians 10 verse 6, and it says, "Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did." And just taking that by itself, you might think, okay, where in the world is this going? So let's read this first part. It says, "The Queen's Museum of Art in New York, United States, houses the world's largest architectural model of a city, depicting all the buildings of New York. On a scale of 1 to 1,200, where 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch corresponds to 33 meters or 100 feet. So we'll just say 1 inch equals 100 feet. It covers nearly 870 square meters. That's 9,335 square feet. That is a huge amount of space. It was originally completed in 1964 by 100 craftsmen who had worked for more than 3 years to complete the project. It has been updated to the 1990s and does not reflect the 2021 cityscape. It is an amazingly intricate and detailed copy of the original." You know, the first thing I thought of that, Sergio, when I saw that is my kids would love to play in that.
Yeah.
They would, of course, tear it up.
The ultimate playground.
Oh,
yeah.
The ultimate playground. Yes, I'm sure they could spend hours in there. That's quite something. Though they go on to say, in the end, though, it is still just that. It's a copy, a model, a representation, although incredibly detailed, but still a representation of something grander, bigger, deeper, and much more intricate than the model itself. And frankly, that's how every model is. A model can be exactly like the original, and yet it's not the original. It's still just a model. So,
yeah, I heard another one with
what's that?
Speaking of models and things. I heard the guy was speaking, and he was like, he said, just think of it like a tree, like a shadow of a tree.
Okay.
And you see that shadow. He said you see the branches. You kind of see where to expect. You kind of see its location.
Right.
You kind of see how big it is. How if it's around or what kind of or it has. But one thing that thing cannot do is hold your weight.
That's a good point.
So that it may be a very accurate representation of what's over there, but it's not. It's not. Yeah, some things that it just cannot do.
In fact, I like that analogy even better. Wow.
But that just came to mind when and this is an interesting segue to what we're going to speak in. The text in the Corinthians 10 and all that. So
in fact, I think the tree is an even better analogy for where we're going with this.
Yes.
Because there's things that the model just simply cannot do.
Yeah.
No matter how good it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's excellent. Well, I want to go ahead and read our we're going to jump into Sundays now. And the first verse in Sundays is a series of 10 verses in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And Paul is writing, and he's talking about models. So keep that in mind as we read this. I don't want you to forget, dear brothers and sisters, what happened to our ancestors in the wilderness long ago. God guided all of them by sending a cloud that moved along ahead of them, and he brought them all safely through the waters of the sea on dry ground. As followers of Moses, they were all baptized in the cloud and the sea, and all of them ate the same miraculous food. And all of them drank the same miraculous water, for they all drank from the miraculous rock that traveled with them, and that rock was Christ. Yet after all this, God was not pleased with most of them. He destroyed them in the wilderness. These events happened as a warning to us, so that we would not crave evil things as they did, or worship idols as some of them did. For the scriptures say, the people celebrated with feasting and drinking, and they indulged themselves in pagan revelry. And we must not engage in sexual immorality as some of them did, causing 23,000 of them to die in one day. Nor should we put Christ to the test as some of them did, and then died from snake bites. And don't grumble as some of them did, for that is why God sent his angel of death to destroy them. All of these events, everything that I just finished reading, all of these events happened to them as examples for us. They were written down to warn us who live at the time when this age is drawing to a close. Examples or patterns or models, if you will. All right. So they give the Greek word there, of course, is typos, which we get our English word type from. And a type or an example is never the original, much like the shadow you just spoke of. It looks just like the original. It can tell us a lot about the original, but there are some things it can't do. It is just a model of something else. So, of course, Hebrews 5 offers this, and it starts to talk about the sanctuary. Now, if you recall, it was a number of lessons ago that it was all about the sanctuary. And we learned that the sanctuary is just a model. In fact, right there in Hebrews 5, it talks about this. Moses was told to erect it according to very specific instructions based on the heavenly sanctuary. Right. So again, it was a model, and it represented what the heavenly sanctuary was literally doing, but it couldn't actually, the sanctuary was used for sacrifices, right?
Yes.
And so when they would cut the sheep or the lamb, and they would kill it, that didn't physically take away. I mean, it didn't really do anything.
It was just it was a symbol.
Symbol, right? A representation of what
it couldn't really hold you, kind of like the tree.
Absolutely not. Just like the tree couldn't.
But
hold your
it was
weight.
pointing to the tree, right?
Yes, absolutely was. And so this, Sunday's lesson continues to highlight the idea that these things that were going on in the earthly sanctuary were only models, only representations, were just shadows of the original that told us what the original was doing and described it in great detail, and yet just a representation.
Yeah, and in hindsight, it's so easy for us to sit here and say,
sure it is.
How can they just drink the same spiritual drink, ate the same spiritual food, and just miss the main point?
Yeah.
It's
easy to be an armchair quarterback.
Be so in love. I think we're going to touch on that later. Be so in love and not fanatical, but like infatuated with the type that you, when the actual thing comes, you don't
completely miss it.
Yes.
How could they do it, right?
Yeah, in hindsight,
yes.
But I mean,
yeah.
Because it says, what do you think Paul wanted to tell to the Corinthians, through these examples, that we don't fall in the same thing, because ultimately, I think of sin like kind of like it's like an instinct to us as human. Right. Kind of like when you know what fire is, you know what fire is, so you're not going to put your hand on it because your brain already processes that, right?
Sure.
I think us satisfaction and pleasing our desires is kind of in the same way, and sometimes we disregard the consequences because we ultimately want to obtain get the high, get the satisfaction.
Sure, whatever that instant,
and whether that affects a certain situation, somebody else, a lot of the times we don't, and much less we definitely don't subject that. Not all of us subject that to a mode of thinking or faith or You know what I'm trying to say?
So not even so much as not looking ahead to the consequences necessarily, but not even considering that at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
like Paul said, you have to die to yourself every single day. I die to myself, right? And I mean, I fall in the same category where like I'd rather not, you know, because of the other things that I want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's easier to think of myself.
Yes.
I mean, that's like you said, it's like instinct. It's natural.
It's natural.
I think of myself. If I'm not deliberately trying to think of others, I'm going to think of myself every single time. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, and in that perspective, now these verses sound so much more like, hey, how does this, in our context, are we, exposed to the truth, and are we over there with Moses eating of the same spiritual manna, and we choose to, be idolaters?
I believe, yes, absolutely, I believe so. But so often we look at their examples and we think, well, we are nothing like them.
Yes.
If I had those kind of miracles in my life, I would be nothing like them. And yet we do have those kinds of miracles.
Yes.
Now, they're different. They're culturally different. They're more representative of the life we live now and what we do now day to day. But if we stop to think, each one of us, you and I both, we could come up with probably half a dozen incredible blessings that have happened within the past month.
Yeah, just this week, yeah.
Or just this week.
Yeah.
No
doubt. And I mean, to me, this also speaks about the plan of salvation, that it was initiated as soon as the fall happened.
Right.
And I'm not talking Adam and Eve. I'm talking.
Way back.
Yes.
In fact,
Lucifer.
In fact, there's some indication when it says from the foundation of the world. Was that this world, or was that the foundation of everything that was created when God saw? God knows the end from the beginning.
Yes.
Right? So, of course, he knew that was going to happen, and he also knew the only way to fix it. And so it was initiated from the very moment of creation.
and all the the examples, all the ceremonial, everything they did pointed to,
Absolutely.
and it was in accordance with the plan of salvation.
Yeah. And even then, so we see the things that they had to do, right? There were actions that had to take.
Yes.
But
the priest had to atone and all the...
It was still built on faith because it was a shadow.
Yes.
It pointed toward something that was going to happen. And so sometimes we point to that and say, yeah, but they had to do things. It doesn't matter. They still had to have faith in what they were doing in order for that salvation to happen, that forgiveness of sin, the same as we do now. Faith in what Christ did for us. They were looking forward to it. We look back to it, of course, but it still regards faith. It has to. Faith is the central point of it. We might have mined a little too deep in Sundays, but right. Excuse me.
Yeah, and Sunday he was thinking that they were saying that Paul kind of uses the Old Testament and the history that's presented there as an example of revealing the truth that we can apply to our life today as today's Christians. And definitely, I mean, we see all those examples of what their actions were, and we can definitely draw from that and try not to, because I think for us mainly is our time. We just our time. We trade our time for income. We trade our time for our time is so hard fought for. Our phones have ads, and we're bombarded from every way. And I think for us, we're kind of in the same predicament, it's just a different circumstance.
Different circumstance. Time is the most precious resource now available to man. And I suppose it's always been that way, but even more so now when everything is competing for your attention. Everything, and that's time, right? As long as it can get your attention. And we only have, 80 to 100 years.
I know.
And that's it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, on this earth.
On this earth, yes.
And that's if we don't die, early. But yeah, I really appreciate the examples Paul uses because it speaks to the statements Jesus made himself, of himself. He called himself the bread of life, the living water, and the examples Paul uses from the Old Testament speak to the water that kept them alive, the water from the rock, and the amazing bread of heaven. So I think we...
Yeah, I think we kind of on Mondays we kind of spoke about the ritual sacrifices.
Oh, okay.
And over there it really talks about how how you had to be a female lamb.
Yes.
And it had to go taken to the temple, and they had to put their hand on the head, sacrifice it, and then the priest had to take the fat out
Right.
for the burnt offering, and then he had to atone for the sin.
Yes.
And like you said, it wasn't really the actual blood didn't really do the forgiving of the sin.
No.
It was actually through faith. And when you put it that way, it's actually interesting because it's actually through their belief that the sins are forgiven.
That's the only way it happens.
Yes.
Yeah. But I find it really interesting, and I don't have an answer for this, Sergio. I find it incredibly interesting that we know Jesus. John the Baptist called Jesus the Lamb of God, which takes away the sins of the world. And I thought, okay, that's an immediate reference to the Old Testament lamb, and that was a sin offering. But you just said something very important that I did not realize before my wife pointed out to me earlier this week. Had to be a female lamb.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Curious.
It's curious, yeah.
I don't have an answer for that. I wonder, I know that God incorporates, he created both male and female in his image, so I get that. But I find that very curious that, Christ, who is the actual lamb, was represented by a female lamb. So anyway, I really don't know what to make of that.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if we can. read into it too much. I don't know.
Maybe, but
because I think after after the flood, there were 7 pairs from the clean ones,
Yes.
only 1 pair from the. So maybe it had to do with reproduction, and who knows.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Very interesting, but that's what the Bible says.
And most of these things carried a very specific type, a very specific thing that pointed forward to something. So,
yes,
yeah.
You're right, because God he created everything down to the cell, down to everything. So obviously nothing is without purpose or without
some sort of meaning.
Yeah, so it has something, or a reason.
So that'll be curious. And they make a very important statement here right after that sentence about the lamb, and that was a ritual that they took part in. That was a ritual sacrifice, and it says this: it says a ritual is an excellent communicator of important values and information, and it needs to be understood. That means it must be understood in its context, and context is so important. So obviously the context here is sin, and the context is also a lamb without blemish, pointing forward to Christ who was sinless. But the blood.
Yeah, like when it says the blood. I wrote here that God as the creator, he has the ultimate attention to detail, and the blood, it's the blood represents life. And the Jews knew what blood is.
Oh yes, they were very familiar.
They knew that the wages of sin is death.
Yeah.
And then they obviously they didn't have the New Testament, but they realized that that's what that was, and that's what that meant. The thing is that they kind of fell into the trap of believing that this is what it actually is doing.
Yes.
Missing, that's another thing, but yes.
They came to idolize the ceremony and the ritual more than what it represented.
Yes.
Yeah, so missed it when it came. But the context, as you said, the blood, they absolutely understood what blood meant, and that the life was in the blood, which incidentally, they were forbidden from eating meat with blood in it, because that's where the life was. So.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we can go down the rabbit hole with the blood and the meat.
Yes, we could. Yes, we could.
And what is blood, and when that gets cooked, and But yes,
I know.
Because if we believe, the word, then we must take the word in its entirety, right? We can't really choose and pick what we like and we don't like, what's convenient and what's not convenient. And I'm speaking out of myself because I'm not going to say that I don't eat meat ever, but I do. It's been a struggle trying to kind of move away from as much as possible from my personal perspective. But
sure.
Yeah, because it's hard to look at these things and realize the health benefits and the why God intended this way, and not heed them, and go and order stuff that's not really.
And that's what it makes me think of. The word you just used, that phrase, health benefits. They had so many rules laid out for them that God gave them to create, basically from a tribe of slaves, to create a
people,
whole new society,
a nation,
yes.
I mean, they
And
had to go through the desert. There's no running water. There's no running toilets. There's no. I mean, even just from the hygiene perspective, they could have died so many different ways.
they could have. Disease was rampant, but no.
Because of the things that they were
Exactly.
doing, following, it's not. And I see a lot of things. A lot of people say, well, the reason that the Jewish people are very bright and doing very well for themselves had to do maybe with the gene pool that had been for so many years had been what do you call it? Not
kept pure,
kept, but yeah, but I mean,
almost, or?
yes, I mean, think about they didn't all the things that they didn't eat, all the other things that they did follow,
all right.
Uh, to an extremity in some cases, but anyway, maybe that's a stretch, but that's my thing.
I don't know. We know that things can be passed down. There's a study called epigenetics. So it's where you make changes in your life, and that can be passed down
over
in your
generations,
genes. Right, over generations.
Yeah.
So it's a true thing, and they're just now getting into that study. So it's funny how science often follows the Bible rather than the other way around.
Funny that you should say that because I was just I will not go on that one.
Are you sure?
It's a different because it was just something that it just popped because I love history and it was talking about the Daniel prophecy in the 1790 the prophecy of 1790 days and that ended at 1790 of the actual year, and that's when the Bible text says, I think it was Nahum, and the knowledge would increase.
Okay.
And as soon as historically, that was like the year that Napoleon decided to go ahead and do the first, what do you call it, excavations or not excavations, but maybe like learn about Egyptians.
Oh.
And learn about the people that lived there before and kind of go exploratory. I mean, it was 1790. Who is exploring in 1790?
Yeah, not a lot
for
of people.
other reasons other than grabbing more land.
Right, or just riches or finding gold or something.
But anyway.
I was curious.
that just kind of popped into my head.
A good bit of history. All right, so I'm not sure, was there, I know I highlighted something at the very end. It was a question. But was there anything else in Sundays that you wanted to bring, or Mondays, that you wanted to bring out?
No, I think it just the Monday just covers the actual the sacrifice and what was its meaning was and how it was very specific, and the details that were involved in the sacrifice and the atonement of sin.
Okay.
And I think it's going to kind of move on to the next where it's going to talk about what that was pointing out to and how is that reflecting to us.
Okay, so yeah, Tuesdays is where I really started to say, now I understand what this is about. But before we jump into Tuesdays, I wanted to read this question and do it for your benefit as well. And if you feel like it, we'd love to see an answer. If you'd like to leave some comments, something in the comment section. But the very end asks a question. First, as a statement. Think about how bad sin must really be that it took the self-sacrifice of one member of the Godhead, Jesus, in order to atone for it. That was the only way it could happen, is the Creator himself had to pay the price for sin. What should this teach us about why we must rely only on grace and never works? After all, what could we possibly add to what Christ has already done for us? And that's where it's and then they title it The Example of Rest. And this is where it started to come together for me. What could we possibly do to add to my own salvation? Yeah,
absolutely nothing.
So right, absolutely nothing. And it's so, and of course I know you spoke of how much clarity we have in hindsight, and it's true. We really do. We have a lot of clarity in hindsight. Looking forward, sometimes things seem murky or muddy, and we don't really see the clarity of it. But this is something I feel like perhaps many have missed for so long. The clarity of salvation and the rest that it brings. Because I cannot add merit to something that is already perfect.
No, yeah.
It's impossible. All right. Well, if you want to take us into to Tuesdays.
Yeah, Tuesday, the title is the example of rest. I want to do that, the first little paragraph. Besides the examples we already have looked at, this idea of types and symbols can apply to the biblical concept of rest as well. To see this, we go to the New Testament books of Hebrews. And that's a good Hebrews 4, 1-11.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I
And
would like to see if I can.
if you'll read
Pull
that, I really appreciate the statement
Yeah.
it makes after that.
If I can, yeah, there we go.
All right.
So I have the English Standard Version.
Okay.
I have the King James, but I'm going to read this one. Therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. For good news came to us just as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith with those who listened. For we who have believed enter that rest, as he has said, as I swore on my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he has somewhere spoken of the seventh day in this day, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. 4:1-3. Oh, so you want me to read all of it, right?
Well, I think that brought out something very important. Where you stopped right there, that brought out something important. There's a question that they have following the reading of that. And it says, how does Israel's experience during the Exodus and the wilderness wanderings offer additional insights into the idea of entering into God's rest? And I know I may be jumping a little bit ahead, but this passage that you just started to read, it talks a lot about the seventh day Sabbath. And for many, and even growing up, I've heard that passage, that 1-11, used to speak about the importance of the Sabbath. Like, see how important it is. But that's not exactly the thrust of that passage, is it, though? It seems like the thrust of the passage, then, is really a call for God's people to be persevering in faith. That's to remain faithful to the Lord and to the gospel, because there is nothing that we can add to the Sabbath. It's perfect.
Yes.
It's absolute, and it points to something. It points to creation, for one. There's nothing that we can add to creation, and there's absolutely nothing we can add to the perfection of the Sabbath rest that it gives us. Every single week, every 7 days, this thing rolls around. This 24 hours rolls around that says, look what God did for you. You can't add to that. And it's pointing us forward to a rest that we can look forward to as well. We can't add to it. We can do nothing to add to that rest that we look forward to in salvation. So, and I may have, that may be more, that may be more in Wednesdays, but
Yeah, I'll go ahead and finish.
Okay.
And again, in this passage, he said, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience, again he appoints a certain day, today, saying through David so long afterward in the words already quoted, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would have not spoken of a day later on. So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. Let us therefore strive to enter that rest, so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience.
Okay, that's where it talked about the Sabbath rest, and that's where it really jumped out at me, Sergio, was this idea, and I wrote it down. You know, it talks about their disobedience, right? And sometimes we think, wait, so if you're disobedient to God, he's going to punish you by keeping you out of heaven? But we have to remember what their disobedience was, why they failed to enter the promised land the first time.
No.
God said, okay, scope out the land. They came back and they said, you know what? It's too hard. We're not going to be able to do it. It's too hard. And God, that had to leave God very puzzled, because nothing is too hard. Did they not remember? Not that many weeks passed. They passed through an ocean with the walls of water on both sides.
All the other
land.
signs that were
before all that. Yes, all the 10 plagues in Egypt, the bitter water made sweet, the manna they ate. All through the
I put like God's rest equals zero disobedience. So
and the disobedience was, they believed it was too hard to cross into that rest.
Yeah, and it's probably speaking to the fact that they were thinking that they are somehow earning,
right? Exactly.
This whole oh, we're special, so we're getting out, and we're going to go ahead and find our way to the promised land.
Exactly. So, what do we do now, today? Oh, Sabbath is too hard. I can't give up things, or, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to get there. And God says, no, no, no. You don't understand. It's not for you to earn. I've already earned it for you. It's for you to develop a relationship with me. That's it. And so we do the same thing. We are disobedient.
It's just a different circumstance.
Circumstances.
Yeah.
The same principle.
Let me
hard.
sleep in. I don't really need to be there. Nobody needs me there.
It's too hard.
Yeah. I don't want to get the kids, and I felt that.
Hey, I've been there.
Get the kids and go to church.
Yeah, I've been there, man. It's too hard. And God says, no. I've already done the work for you. Mm-hmm. And so I think, that really jumped out at me as the type of disobedience where we begin to think that we have to work our way in. It's something that we can do to earn ourselves into that rest, which for them was Canaan. For us, we look forward to as heaven, of course, in the new earth. And that is simply...
Well, it was heaven. It was also Jesus' first coming as well. They missed that as well.
Well, they did. They did, because they were so focused on working to earn righteousness. Yeah, to be righteous. So
that's on the shadow.
Exactly. Trying to hang a swing on the shadow, and it just wasn't working.
And I think the second question says, read Hebrews 4:3 again. For we who have believed enter that rest, as he said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter in my rest, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world.
Yes.
What is the main problem with the people referred to? What lesson can we take from this for ourselves, who have had the gospel preached to us as well as to them? How does that affect us? I mean, like you were saying, we were just speaking. We have the truth. We have the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do with it? You know what I mean? Do we see it? Do we implement it? Or do we kind of do the same thing where, I'm going to kind of work my way in?
Well, it makes me think that sometimes, and I'm not sure exactly how to say this, that sometimes we have a complicated, a complicated relationship with the truth or the knowledge. As it somehow that knowledge or that level of truth that we are bearing inside of our minds elevates us in some way. And the whole thing that God wants, he wants is our hearts. He wants us. He wants in a relationship with us. We've talked about this in numerous ways. Jesus makes it very clear. Maybe last week we probably got on this anyway. It's a soapbox, so I apologize. But when he talks about those who come to him at the end of time and claim his name, claim his ability, they say, we preached, we prophesied, we cast out demons. He says, away from me, lawbreakers. He desires a relationship, a knowledge of, not a knowledge, a heart knowledge. I never knew you, but it's an intimate knowledge. It's not just a head knowledge. He requires a relationship with himself. So it makes me wonder if our knowledge gets in our way.
I think he has a parable with the vineyard, right? You will see the grape plant by its fruits, and the ones that does not it gets cut.
But wouldn't those look like fruits? We preached in your name. We prophesied in your name. We cast out demons in your name.
They could also be wild fruits, and those get cut as well.
Those look like fruits, though.
Yeah, look, so, you're right. I mean, you're right.
From our perspective, from a human perspective,
but God,
those look like fruit.
Yes, those look like fruit, yes.
So the thing he is most important, and the fruit that he talks to his disciples about on a most common basis is, by your love for one another, they will know that you are my followers.
Yep.
That's the fruit. That's the fruit that really, everything else comes out of love. Love, I think you might have made this comment to me one time, that love is the initial link in the chain. And everything else comes out of that link, But it has to be the first link in that chain is love. Maybe it was someone else. But
it's a good knowledge, yeah.
So there are other fruit, but without love being the first fruit, maybe it's a false relationship. So I wanted to read the last question for Tuesdays before we get on to Wednesdays. It says, how can an understanding of what it means to be saved by the blood of Jesus help us to enter into the kind of rest that we can have in Jesus, knowing that we are saved by grace and not by works? Honestly, that speaks to me of probably the best rest I can possibly imagine, because everybody dies. That's the house that we all get to go to, unless Jesus comes back while we are alive. But in reality, that's the house we all go to, and that's the house that no one comes back from and says, "Oh, let me tell you about it." So if I want there to be something after that, and I'm not sure exactly how to make that happen, I'm going to work my tail off to make that happen. It's in many cultures throughout the history of time. Egyptians, these huge, pyramids, these tombs full of riches and everything to carry with them into the afterworld, so they could be comfortable. They worked hard to be comfortable in the afterlife. And now I don't have to do that now because of someone else's blood, because of someone else's sacrifice. I don't have to work my tail off knowing that I am promised eternal life. I just have to know the person who gives it to me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and I like the way the second part says,
how's that?
How can you enter the rest and knowing that we were saved by grace and not by works?
Yeah.
So I think that ties well with the rest. It's not, you're not taking a yoke to earn salvation. In fact, you don't earn salvation at all. You just have to accept Jesus and represent him in your daily life.
Absolutely. And the only way we can represent him is to know who he is. Really internally know who he is and represent him to others.
And I know it's another rabbit trail. I've had this conversation before where there's a lot of Calvinist predestination things out there, and a lot of people believe that that if you accept Jesus one time and you're saved, then you're saved. That you're in no peril. Kind of like, and the way the justification is, well, if you have a parent, if you have a child, you may be mad at them at one point. They maybe do something very bad, but at the end of the day, you still love your children.
They're still your children.
They're still your children. And they're like, Jesus, and then think about, then what do you think? How do you think God? How can He take the salvation away once it's given? Once you have accepted Jesus. But the thing is, if you say accept Jesus one day and the next day you're completely how does that that thinking?
I've gotten involved with someone like that before, and they used a circular logic on that. Not saying all people do, but this person did. They said, well, if you turn away, that means you were never really saved in the first place. I thought, no, it means you have choice.
And you make that choice every day.
You make that choice, yes. Christ's salvation, Christ's sacrifice was once for all. I understand that. I'm that's no confusion about that. It was one sacrifice for all of humanity for all time, backwards and forwards. But we still have to choose it. He does not force that on us.
And see, that's the thing, because the way it was presented to me, it was like, well, it almost seemed like, oh, well, you're kind of like, it's more like you're work basing it, or like it's more like of a yoke.
Because you're
choosing it. And like, you're not saved, and then that's it. You basically you're still making that. But the thing is, then why would Paul say I have to die to myself every single day?
Take up my cross daily.
Yeah. Every single day. It doesn't say, I did it one time and then
then I'm good.
Peace.
I can do whatever. Do whatever. I'm saved. No, that in my mind, in my thinking, that cheapens grace. And Paul says it well himself. He says, because of grace, should I then sin more?
Yeah.
He says, no, God forbid. No, I should not. It doesn't mean that I just go out and sin more because I have grace. So
anyway, that was
you're right. Little bit of rabbit trail, but really good one. Really good one. All right. So this idea of hardening hearts on Wednesdays. It says, harden not your hearts. If you read Hebrews 4 through 7, I'll read the Psalm version.
Yep, I was kind of going through the Psalm. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
All right.
For He has somewhere spoken of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all His works. And again in this passage He said, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience. Again, he appoints a certain day, today, saying through David, so long afterward, in the word already quoted today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts.
Okay, and Psalm chapter 95, beginning in verse 8 says, and I really like this because it kind of explains this phrase, harden your heart. Like, what exactly does that mean? The Lord says, don't harden your hearts as Israel did at Meribah, as they did at Massah in the wilderness. For there your ancestors tried my patience. They courted my wrath, though they had seen many miracles. And to this point, you're thinking, okay, but still, what's going on here? And then verse 10, for 40 years I was angry with them, and I said, they are a people, and here it is. This is part it helped me kind of turn my mind on to what was happening here. They are a people whose hearts turn away from me. They refuse to do what I tell them. And then verse 11, so in my anger, I made a vow, they will never enter my place of rest. Now, why aren't they entering it? Not because God got angry, but because they turn away from it. They choose, right? Just what we were talking about.
Yep.
They made the choice. They turned away from him. And he's equating that with hardening your heart. I'm going to turn away from God. And God is not going to force entrance into his place of rest on us.
Yeah, he will not allow it.
Do that.
I think he said they will not enter my rest, right?
Absolutely. They
shall not
will
enter
not
my
enter
rest.
my rest because he's not going to force it on them. They have turned away, and God in his mercy says, okay.
Yeah, so I guess our warning would be,
don't turn away.
Make sure you make the right choices.
Yes, don't turn away from me.
Yeah.
When he says, I want you to do this, we have a choice. We can say, okay, or I really want to, and we can do it against his will. So again, that for me, that really helped explain this idea of harden the hearts and equating it with turning away from God. I'm going to turn my heart away from God. All right. Well, and so all of Wednesday's deals.
And you're
with
right.
this idea.
Like it says, of course, it says Israel did enter the promised land. A new generation crossed the border, and with God's help, took the strongholds of the land and settled there. Yep. But what were the results of how much suffering? How much did some of those choices that they made? How much? And that makes me think of, well, how about me? Like, what if some of the choices that I make today, how do they affect my life? Yeah, my walk. You know what I mean? Because it's obvious that this is, it was very impactful.
Yeah. And their ancestors, the ones who did not enter, it really affected the lives of those who did enter. I believe that they ended up having to fight much more often than they would have had they gone in the first time when God said, I will go ahead of you. I will go ahead of you and fight your battles for you. It talks about God using hornets to drive out entire tribes. Can you imagine that? Being driven out of your home and village by swarms and clouds of hornets? That's frightening to me because I have a particular fear of those. So,
well, I mean, when we talk about God, I mean, it's just such a powerful thing.
Yes.
And seeing the cloud of fire every day and all that.
Yes.
I mean, that's just.
Yes. And this was a pillar of fire that lit up the camp of over 1 million people. So this wasn't a pencil thin, jet of fire from like an oil well site that we see the fire. Yes, this was a huge pillar of fire that had to have had shed light over the campsite of 1 million plus people. And the same with the cloud. A pillar of, I don't know exactly how it describes it, but a pillar of cloud that would have provided shade for this campsite of over 1 million people. That's a huge.
Yeah, because see, like
cloud.
in my mind too, like I was thinking, they weren't, but I only have a vision of like maybe 1,000,
right.
I didn't think of being that many. This is a lot of people we're talking about here.
Huge crowd of people, yes. And intense too, and arranged very, arranged very neatly and nicely in order. So you can imagine how much land it would have covered.
Yes.
We think of that. Have you ever been to I'm sorry, I'm straying for just a little bit. Some of you might recognize this. There's a giant Pathfinder. It's an international camporee. It's called Oshkosh. I don't know if you've ever.
No, I haven't been there.
Okay,
no.
You've seen pictures. That's about.
I did see some pictures.
About 60,000 people, I think, gathered at the last one. Maybe a little bit more. But it's over a huge airfield. That's less than 100,000 people.
A million.
Can you picture what that campsite would have been? It would have covered square miles, you know. So yeah, it says pillar of fire must have been amazingly huge. So as they, of course, okay. I don't know, maybe if you wanted to bring this out, it really jumped out at me.
No, go ahead.
And Hebrews 4:6, I'm going to go ahead and read that to you from the New Living Translation. It says, "So God's rest is there for people to enter. But those who formerly heard the good news failed to enter because they disobeyed God." And again, it goes back to that idea, so they disobeyed God, so he punished them? No. They didn't enter because they turned their hearts away from God, and that is disobedience.
Yeah.
You know, but it is their choice to do that.
Yeah, because it's asking what the link is between disobedience and not entering God's rest, and is the choice to disobey.
Yes, choosing to turn your heart away, which is harden your heart.
Harden your heart.
Yeah. And it expresses this idea, not obviously in that translation, but today. The word today means that there is no more time to mess around. Today requires a response and a decision now. And I think of that famous quote, I can't even remember where it comes from. Of course, it comes in the New King James, "Today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts." But the famous quote says, "Today, today, today. Today is the day of salvation. Always, right now. There is no more perfect time. Always." You know,
amen to that.
Sometimes we want to put it off. We say, well, tomorrow, or after I do X, Y, Z in my life, or after I accomplish something.
Yeah, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. So
you don't.
You never know.
None of us. We can plan, but we truly don't know. We can't see around that corner of time.
No, not at all.
Wow. Let's move on to Thursday, I suppose. Yeah.
Thursday's title is "Conquering a Heavenly City."
That's kind of an odd title.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'm going to read the first thing.
Okay.
The logical development of the key ideas in Hebrews 4 becomes particularly evident when reading Hebrews 4:8 through 11. Joshua did not give Israel rest. Consequently, since God is no liar, there must be another rest that remains for the people of God. This group is not made up exclusively of Jewish believers. It includes those who have accepted Jesus as their personal Savior. I mean, that's very... it's applicable to us since we do have Jesus as our Lamb,
right,
and our Savior and our Deliverer, and just like those lambs or those sacrifices offered by the Jewish people, it was all of them were pointing out to Him, and given, and it was not. Now the salvation was not to a particular people; it was for all the people who believed.
Right, and not dependent on anything that we can do. So it makes it immediately available to all, and it also makes it immediately available as something that simply needs to be accepted versus earned. So again, that idea of rest.
Yeah, one of the things that popped up to me was that it was now open. It was not only exclusive to the Jewish believers. It reminded me. It made me think of the centurion that had 100 people under him. And the amount of faith that he came had. To
Jesus. And Jesus told him.
This guy didn't know. Yeah. I can tell you right now, if he was a Roman, he didn't know nothing about anything. He didn't know about no Sabbath.
He wasn't looking forward for hundreds of years to this Messiah. No, just faith.
Just pure faith. Yeah. And that as for our time frame, that speaks so much to us that if Jesus said, I haven't seen so much faith in all of, right? I don't know exactly how the comment says, but in any case, I'm just saying,
No, I'm gonna take what you said and kind of run with that, if that's okay.
Okay, go for it.
Now, this may get me in trouble, but that's all right. So, are you saying that people don't have to become Seventh-day Adventists? I mean, that seems to be what that, to me, that really jumps out immediately and says, wait a minute, this is a Roman who did not worship at all the Jewish gods. But he had faith enough in who Jesus was and what he could do. And that was it.
Yeah, and you know why? You know why the answer to that question is because if he had this much faith to believe who Jesus was, then he would try to make his life like Jesus.
No.
And
okay.
That alone equals, Adventist, right?
Well, okay.
Quote unquote.
Quote unquote.
So if you have this much faith to believe what the word says,
or at least would you go with Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Regardless of what transpires in your past life, when you come to have a faith in Jesus, then you might make your life like that.
Exactly.
Like that. And so I could easily see his life changing after meeting Jesus.
Yes, yeah.
And having that
that's
happen.
the key. Yeah, that's the key thing. Yeah.
With no regard to what his life was before. There was the moment of faith and acceptance and saying, oh, this is a God who is powerful enough.
Yeah, and that whole event makes where it says if you have so much faith as a seed of mustard seed, you can move mountains. Yeah. That speaks so much to that text. How true that text is, how literal, and we can
well, I mean,
ask for that kind of faith or
and we
attain that.
We might say that. To us, in the human way of thinking, that's a powerful faith. That if I had this much faith, I could tell this mountain to get up and jump into the ocean, and it would. But that is in real terms, Sergio. I think that is nothing compared to the faith that it takes for a person to believe that I am saved because of someone else's sacrifice for me. And instantly an eternal consequence happens. This mountain getting into the sea would be amazing to watch. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah. I like watching buildings blow up. I think that's neat. But in controlled demolitions. I needed to make sure I say that. But seeing someone accept Jesus Christ and knowing that something eternal has just occurred, that's incredible. And they believe it, and that's why it happens. Mm-hmm. That is almost unfathomable. All you have to do is believe it, and it happens. It's incredible, Sergio. It makes me think that, sometimes we like to think that mustard seed thing is amazing, but, it's so much more amazing that someone can be saved for all of eternity based on belief.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting, very powerful.
So as we go further down, it talks about how there's no longer any Jew, right? No Jew, no slave, no Greek. Yeah. And it made me think. There was a question that I'm going to read Galatians. That's not something you just read, right?
No.
Okay,
no,
so
it's not.
It says, so you are all children of God through faith in Christ Jesus, which is kind of what we were alluding to, and all who have been united with Christ in baptism have been made like him. And then it says, there is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female, for you are all Christians. You are all one in Christ Jesus. And now that you belong to Christ, you are the true children of Abraham. You are his heirs. And now all the promises God gave to him belong to you. And the question was, what does that mean? That there is no longer Jew or Greek, slave, free, male or female, in the context in which Paul's writing. What did you get from that?
I like the very last one where it says we are heirs now. Because we are in Christ, then we're part of Abraham and we are heirs to the promise.
Yeah.
And so because of Jesus' sacrifice, now we're part of the kind of like the lineage, quote unquote.
So an heir usually is a family member,
yes,
right?
A family member, yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a family member generally, an heir to something. So essentially, by that sacrifice, and we talk about this easily, but essentially by that sacrifice, Christ reunited God and humanity. Mm-hmm. We were at creation, and now we became again family. We're joined by blood, literally by the shedding of blood. We're joined by blood. And it made me think too, the very first part is kind of what jumped out, the Jew or Greek, slave or free, because that tells me even in his time that labels were very important.
Oh, right? Yeah, especially to Jewish people.
Especially, yes. Well, yes. Is it any less so today? Labels. We say Republican, Democrat. We say liberal, conservative.
Yeah.
We say Christian or non-Christian, or even more Seventh-day Adventist or Baptist or Lutheran or Catholic. Oh, labels. We have labels everywhere. And Paul says, no one is higher in importance than any other in the eyes of God now. This truly just levels the playing field. Yeah. It levels everybody out in the eyes of God. each one of us is worth the blood of the creator of the universe. And man,
that's a very
love
good
it.
point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
I love it. So, here it is. I spoke about it earlier when we were talking about the Sabbath. It's Hebrews 4 that's often used to emphasize the observance of the Sabbath, right?
Yeah, you touched on
just
that earlier.
how important it is. And
Yep,
I forgot where it was so Thursdays. Wow. Maybe that was because I studied it last. It was freshest in my mind. So I want to read that first part, and then if we can talk about it. At times, Hebrews 4 has been used to emphasize the observance of the seventh-day Sabbath, while others have used it to challenge the validity of the Sabbath rest, in light of the fact that there is another end-time rest. Neither position, I like that, neither position reflects the biblical text well. Instead, the text suggests that the end-time focus on God's special rest has been present. And you brought this out when you talked about from the foundation of the world, at creation. Since creation, and that the celebration of Sabbath rest offers a small weekly taste of that end-time rest. So it points back to the origin of rest, and it points forward to the end-time rest that we can look forward to as well. And we get a taste of that rest every 7 days.
Almost like a shadow.
A shadow. Absolutely. It can't offer us what the real thing offers, but it gives us a very clear glimpse of it. Yeah, love that. Love that. The shadow of the tree. So I highlighted this quote there in Thursdays. It said, "The Sabbath-like rest that remains for the people of God, echoing God's rest on the first Sabbath in Earth's history, means that we can cease from our own works and trust Him." And this is the part where I get, we talk about not doing work on the Sabbath, but I think that this is a higher meaning here. A deeper meaning means that we can cease from our own works and trust Him to fulfill His promise of salvation for us. That's works relating to salvation. We just can't work our way into salvation.
No. And I want to read the last paragraph for Thursday.
Sure.
Which I thought that was very, very interesting. In a world that highly values self-made people, hard-working go-getters, resting in Jesus and trusting in His grace is sufficient to save and transform us, is truly counter-cultural.
Wow.
And that made me think, well, now that's very interesting, because it's true. We live in a world where somebody is celebrated if they're a go-getter and if they're a businessman and they're successful and they have all these things and all these things.
In fact,
but grace is sufficient.
In fact, that's the pinnacle of this world. The power and things and influence and all of that. That's the pinnacle.
And rest in Jesus basically is what. Right. I mean, I guess one. It depends on where your treasures lay. Right.
It's true. Where are you putting up your treasures? Yes.
But I thought that was very interesting because our culture is very, very, very. I like the word countercultural. Cultural. I thought that was very, very well put.
It is, and
against our grain, like it's against our nature. You know what I mean? On top of the fact that you were fighting yourself to get yourself in control for your desires, you also have to keep in mind that all these things are temporary.
Yes. Yeah.
And you should put your treasure up in heaven and not here.
It makes me think too, though, sometimes, in addition to that, and this is going down a slightly different road, but as far as the Christian church goes, I think this is even countercultural to current Christian culture. Even in Christian culture, no one would readily admit that I'm earning my way into salvation. No one's going to say that. But yet so often we take actions that border on that. That you say, well, is that person trying to look righteous? Or are they doing that? What's their motivation for that? Many times, and I'm not trying to single out any one person. I'm more speaking about the Christian church as a whole, all of Protestant Christianity, and in one way or another. Sometimes we think, well, what's really happening? Because that doesn't look like what Christ did on this earth. So I think in some ways that goes against the counterculture of Christianity as well. And certainly needs a closer look. But it's made to be a personal introspection.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That was very interesting. Yeah, and I think it goes well with Fridays, where she's the Ellen quote, the Ellen White quote.
Okay.
Let's see if I can read it real quick. We're not always willing to come to Jesus with our trials and difficulties. Sometimes we pour our troubles into human ears and tell our afflictions to those who cannot help us, and neglect to confide all to Jesus, who is able to change the sorrowful way to paths of joy and peace. Self-denying, self-sacrificing gives glory and victory to the cross. And that's what I really wanted to.
Wow.
Self-denying, self-sacrificing gives glory, because I mean, maybe because of the personal. I find it hard to restrain in certain areas, and so it's like this is right here, but gives glory to the. And if you have a relationship with Jesus, if you truly believe, then that's how you bring glory. That's how you. That's
Isn't
how you
it incredible
worship.
that and no one needs to see it. I mean, surely some may notice, and that's, I'm not saying we should that it's a sin for if people notice, but no one needs to see it in order for glory and victory to the cross to be given. And the rest of the universe, the unfallen universe, does see it and says, there's the power of God's kingdom by self-denial and self-sacrifice. And we have the power to... And I love the way you said that we have the power to worship like that. Mm-hmm. That's worship. Truly the strongest power in the entire universe, self-denial and self-sacrifice. Wow. Because it shows that God's kingdom truly does work. That Satan's kingdom is a lie.
I just think that for us, for our generation, I think that's just in our world now. That's so relevant.
Yes, it is.
Because we may not have idols of like actual wood and everything, but we have
idols of paper.
Yes, we have so many other things.
Green paper. Yeah.
So, but that was.
Wow.
These lessons are getting better and better, aren't they?
They are. They are indeed. All right. Well, if you know what, let's go ahead and close with prayer. I think we've traveled down quite a few paths here. I didn't start the timer right away, so thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you.
If you would join us in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, Lord, thank you so much for joining Sergio and I as we sat down and as we discussed, as we studied together, as we read your word. Thank you for bringing new insights to our minds and to our hearts. And Lord, thank you for not just allowing us to be an exercise in learning new knowledge, but please implant these truths, these insights into our hearts, that we would incorporate these into our daily lives, that they would make changes in who we are, that you would write your law in our hearts. Lord, for those that study with us online by watching this video, please do the same for them. Amen. Father, we're thankful that we can gather together and study in the way we have. Please bless those that study with us this week. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you once again for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
And may God bless you while we're apart. We'll see you next week. Thanks.